all of us in the 60s in the UK were very aware of Alvarez, the new poetry. It was indeed remarkable. It introduced the world at large, or the larger world of readers, to Sylvia Plath and Ted Hughes and a number of other poets, some of whom have remained and some of whom have faded. But it was actually quite a small book, I think about 140-50 pages. At the same time, in the States, a 2-volume set appeared, which in all is about 500 pages, and it was called New Poets of England and America. There's a first and a second selection, and the main editors were Donald Hall and Robert Pack. And reading these again today, they're very interesting because a lot of poets whose work is now largely unknown are still there, and between them, Hall and Pack managed to pick out their best poems, which, unless you buy collected poems of sometimes now quite seemingly minor poets, you cannot find. One poem I particularly like is by Anthony Hecht, and it's called Third Avenue in Sunlight. Third Avenue in sunlight, nature's error. Already the bars are filled and John is there. Beneath a plentiful lady over the mirror, he tilts his glass in the mild mahogany air. I think of him when he first got out of college, serious, thin, unlikely to succeed. For several months he hung around the village, boldly t-shirted, unfettered but unfreed. Now he confides to a stranger, I was first scout and kept my glimmers peeled till after dark. Our outfit had as its sign a bloody knout. We met behind the museum in Central Park. Of course we were kids. But still those savages, war-painted, a flap of leather at the loins, file silently against him. Hostages are never taken. One summer in Des Moines they entered his hotel room, tomahawks flashing like barracuda. He tried to pray. 3 years of treatment. Occasionally talks about how he almost didn't get away. Daily the prowling sunlight whets its knife along the sidewalk. We almost never meet. In the Rembrandt dark he lifts his amber life. My bar is somewhat further down the street. Not perhaps a great poet, but a very, very beautifully ironic poet, Anthony Hecht, who is now a very old man. Another poet is Donald Justice, who was one of the 2 main editors, and this is called On a Painting by Patient B of the Independent State Hospital for the Insane. These 7 houses have learned to face one another, but not at the expected angles. Those silly brown lumps that are probably meant for hills and not other houses, after ages of being themselves, though naturally slow, are learning to be exclusive without offending. The arches and entrances, down to the right out of sight, have mastered the lesson of remaining closed, and even the skies keep a certain understandable distance, for these are the houses of the very rich. One sees their children playing with leopards, tamed at great cost, or perhaps it is only other children, for none of these objects is anything more than a spot, and perhaps there are not any children, but only leopards playing with leopards, and perhaps there are only the spots, and the little maids from the windows hanging like tongues, calling the children in, admiring the leopards, or the dashes of a child might represent motion by means of, or dazzlement possibly, the brilliance of solid gold houses. The clouds resemble these empty balloons in cartoons which approximate silence. These clouds, if clouds they are not the smoke from the 7 aspiring chimneys. The more one studies them, the more it appears They too have expressions. One might almost say they have their habits, their wrong opinions, that their impassivity masks an essentially lovable foolishness, and they will be given names by those who will live under them, not public like mountains, but private like companions. W.D. Snodgrass was one of the lesser known confessional poets, highly praised by Robert Lowell, and this is a beautiful poem about nursing an old man. It was either his own father, I believe, or his wife's father. It's called A Flat One. Old Fritz, on this rotating bed, for 7 wasted months you lay, unfit to move, shrunken grey, no good to yourself or anyone, but to be babied, changed and bathed and fed. At long last that's all done. Before each meal, twice every night, we set pads on your bed sores, shut your catheter tube off, then brought the second canvas and black iron bed frame and clamped you in between them tight, scared, so we could turn you over. We washed you, covered you, cut up each bite of meat you ate. We watched your lean jaws masticate as ravenously your useless food, as thieves at hard labour in their chains chew or insects in the wood. Such pious sacrifice to give you all you could demand of pain. Receive this haddock's body, slain for you, old tyrant. Take this blood of a tomato, shed that you might live. You had that costly food. You seemed to be all finished, so we'd plug your old recalcitrant anus and tie up your discouraged penis in a great snow-white bow of gauze. We wrap you, pin you, and cart you down below, 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 because your credit has finally run out. On our steel table, trussed and carved, you'd find this world's hard-working, starved teeth working in your precious skin. The earth turns in the end by turnabout and opens to take you in. 7 months gone down the drain. Thank God that's through. Throw out the 4x4s, swab sticks, the thick salve for bed sores. Throw out the diaper pads and drug containers. Pile the bedclothes in a wad and rinse the cider jug, half filled with the last urine. Then empty out the cotton cans, autoclave, the bowls and spit pans, unhook the pumps and all the red tubes, catheter suction, oxygen. Next wash the empty bed. All this dark age machinery on which we had tormented you to life. Last, gather up the few belongings, snapshots, some old bills, your mail and half a pack of luckies. We won't light you after meals. Old man, these 7 months you've lain determined, not that you would live, just to not die. No one would give you one last chance you could ever wake from that first night, much less go well again, much less go home and make your living. How could you hope to find a place for yourself in all creation? Pain was your only occupation, and pain that should content and will a man to give up nerved you to grind your clenched teeth, breathing till your skin broke down, your calves went flat, and your legs lost all sensation. Still you took enough morphine to kill a strong man. Finally nitrogen mustard. You could last 2 months after that. It would kill you then. Even then you wouldn't quit, old soldier. Yet you must have known inside the animal had grown sick of the world, made up its mind to stop. Your mind ground to its separate way, merciless and blind, into those last weeks when the breath would only come in fits and starts, that puffed out your sections like the parts of some enormous damaged bug. You waited not for life, not for your death, just for the deadening drug that made your life seem bearable. You whispered you would not die, yet in the nights I heard you cry like a whipped child. In fierce old age you whimpered, Tears stood on your gunmetal blue cheeks, shaking with rage and terror. So much pain would fill your room that when I left I'd pray that if I came back the next day I'd find you gone. You stayed for me, nailed to your own rapacious still self-will. You shook loose finally. They say this was a worthwhile job, unless they tried it. It is mad to throw our good lives after bad. Waste time, drugs and our minds. While strong, men starve. How many young men did we rob to keep you hanging on? I think we did you much good. Well, when you died, none of us wept. You killed for us, and so we kept you, because we need to earn our pay. No, we'd still have to help you try. We would have killed for you today. I can't imagine anyone writing that poem or anything like that poem today. But still, I think it is a marvellous memento of caring, which is so much talked about today, but no one would dream of writing about it. One poet I knew personally was the late John Silkin, and this is his most famous poem, and probably, realistically, his only truly successful one, Death of a Son, who died in a mental hospital aged 1. Something has ceased to come along with me, something like a person, something very like one, and there was no nobility in it or anything like that. Something was there like a 1-year-old house dumb as stone, while the near buildings sang like birds and laughed, understanding the pact they were to have with silence. But he neither sang nor laughed. He did not bless silence like bread with words. He did not forsake silence, but rather, like a house in mourning, kept the eye turned in to watch the silence, while the other houses like birds sang around him, and the breathing silence neither moved nor was still. I have seen stones, I have seen brick, but this house was made up of neither bricks nor stone, but a house of flesh and blood with a flesh of stone and bricks for blood, a house of stones and blood in breathing silence, with the other birds singing crazy in its chimneys. But this was silence. This was something else. This was hearing and speaking, though he was a house drawn into silence. This was something religious in his silence, something shining in his quiet. This was different from altogether something else. Though he never spoke, this was something to do with death. And then slowly the eye stopped looking inward. The silence rose and became still. The look turned to the other place and stopped, with the birds still shrilling around him. And as if he could speak, he turned over on his side with his 1 year red as a wound. He turned over as if he could be sorry for this, and out of his eyes 2 great tears rolled like stones, and he